SAP is the Walmart of ERP systems, okay? It's the big target. So, of course, you're going to hear about big targets and big money failures more. Are they successful in implementations? For sure, all the time, right? Are they a good system? It depends on what your requirements are. That's why it's on you to be responsible for the software that you buy. So let's dig into an actual successful story, because many of you have asked me about it. And we can take the same as we do with failure case studies of what worked and what you should be doing for any system that you're considering buying or implementing within your business. Specifically in this example, we're going to talk about SAP S/4HANA because that's obviously one of their most prevalent systems that they're going to push you towards. So this large auto manufacturer, over 10,000 employees, a tier 1 auto manufacturer, was struggling with fragmented systems. And the other reason I wanted to give you guys this example is because they were not an SAP shop like for their core systems beforehand. So they're taking S/4HANA and they're evaluating it for a variety of different centralization tactics. They had tons of Excel-based workarounds, couldn't see inventory or production KPIs clearly, right, around their global plants, which we see that all the time, right? And they had a ton of paper, very manual processes on the shop floor. They also used, I'll mention, a larger system integrator. They're not the big four. I refuse to say those projects are successful, but I'm sure there's some that are, to a point, right? But what they did is they implemented S/4HANA across their environment. So we're talking about supply chain, warehouse, finance, sales. They also, because they're focused in production manufacturing, have an MES system, a manufacturing execution system, that they were able to integrate with the SAP standardization across that digital core. They digitized planning, right? Really good step with SAP, DS, MM, and then BPC. They also moved all of their warehouses over to SAP's EWM. It really helps with things like RF scanners, container tracking, like one centralized master data management. And then it helps to automate finance too, so those two can speak together and work together really well with SAP FI. Some of the results this achieved, and we'll talk about like why this was a successful implementation, because it's very little to do with SAP and more to do with the work that they put in effectively and was scalable. But they saw inventory warehouse down 3%, right? So we have better working capital, lower storage costs, etc. The production cycle downtime went down by 4%, which is huge for a company that size. Also, their profit loss from component shortages went down 10%. So we have fewer line stops, we have fewer missed sales. Total production costs also went down 0.5%, which doesn't sound impressive, but if you work in automotive at that scale, you understand that's super impressive. They also had on-time delivery go up by 5%. We're able to automate a bunch of things, especially on the financial side. So things like bank statement registration was up by something like 96%, which is crazy. So their month-end close was much more controlled. And in my humble opinion, their most impressive stat had nothing to do with the technology, but had everything to do with employee engagement, which was up 20%, thanks to less of this manual work being lost in spreadsheets. It's just honestly an awful experience working there. So why did this go so well for them? Well, there's a variety of different reasons, but I think the biggest piece would be their process mapping. So their integrator was on site with them for over 15 days, talking to planners, operators, engineers, dispatchers, managers, all of those people actually on the shop floor. And they took at least 6 weeks, right? Not a lot of people want to do this, but you need to, in order to be successful, to document those processes across multiple assembly sites, right? And what this did is it made the S4 workflows be designed for that business's real production workflows, not SAP's best practices, right? So this is leverage for the business to focus on the technology meeting their needs, not the other way around. I also want to spend just a minute focusing on that MES integration. We see this all the time with SAP. I don't think that they have a good MES, right? So I think that if you are heavily production focused and you need a manufacturing execution system, which many, especially of my clients do, right? A lot of times they will have bought an ERP system or a bigger system thinking that it can do MES level work, and it just can't. The good thing about this is this business was like, hey, I like our MES system. I need you to play well with it in order to get this sale. They were focused on that. And so they could actually build out an integration with a system that they already liked. They also focused on the entire value chain, and not only from a process standpoint, but also from a technology standpoint. And they were very intentional about like, hey, these are the different modules we need in order to implement this system to effectively serve what we need. And those are the types of things that allows them to do things like I always call the boring metrics, cutting storage, enabling materials to arrive at the right plant at the right time in the right quantities, right? Those little micro efficiencies are going to save us a lot of money, especially if we're a larger, global complex business. And they were only able to achieve that because they did the boring work, right? We centralized that master data. If a business that size can do it, you can do it, right? And they looked at suppliers, customers, materials. They killed duplicates, bad records. They boosted that planning and decision accuracy, all while looking at that before they implemented a new technology. Doesn't matter what you're implementing, if you don't do that foundational work, you cannot build a solid house. They also focused on attaching that data to the financial data, right? That's why they were able to automate those bank statements and things like that, because they had the data to do that. So whenever we have a business coming to us wanting to automate these types of things, they have to have the foundational piece to do that. Can you drive a car on a road that doesn't exist? Yeah, I mean, you can drive through a forest if you really try, but you're going to hit a lot of very big trees. It's the same thing with not clearing the path to the road, right? That they did in this business. I definitely invite you guys to share what's been successful for you as well with not only SAP, but every other type of technology you're implementing in your business, because that's the point, right, of my platform, is sharing what's working and sharing what's not working so that we can make sure as we go forward, we buck these weird trends of one, letting big software be controlling our business because we gave away the keys. In this example, this business did the work, right? They did the work internally, so SAP couldn't come in and completely, take it out from under them. They had an integrator on their side that is a very good system integrator and showed up for them, right? On their shop floors, not offshore, not just for testing, not ghosting them when things get a little tough, because I promise you, this got tough, right? But it wasn't a situation in which they didn't have the support they needed to be successful. So definitely, drop how that support has worked for you in the comments. And the goal is just making sure that we're making our own good business decisions, not letting some other vendor outsource it.